The afternoon sun cast a gentle glow over Washington, D.C. Karoline Leavitt, 27 years old, and the youngest White House press secretary in history, was resting in her elegant apartment near the White House. The small silver cross pinned to the collar of her navy blazer, a symbol of her faith from New Hampshire, caught the light as she stood. Suddenly her phone rang. It was President Trump. There's a religious case at the D.C. local court. A group of Christians is suing because they were banned from praying in public. Go now. Observe and report. His voice was urgent, leaving no time to hesitate. Karoline's impeccably tidy apartment reflected her disciplined nature, documents stacked neatly, business attire ready for the day. Today, she'd chosen a simple look: navy blazer, white shirt, black pants, but still wore the cross out of habit. As Trump's spokesperson, she was no stranger to crises, but this case struck closer to home. It involved her personal faith. She quickly climbed into her sleek black SUV and sped through the congested city streets. NPR played quietly before she switched it off, focusing on the unexpected mission ahead. Before diving deeper into the story, let me know where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an update. Karoline pushed open the glass doors of the D.C. local court, stepping into a cramped, chaotic room. The murmurs of the waiting crowd created an off-key symphony. Citizens shuffling over minor cases like traffic violations and contract disputes, punctuated by the steady clicking of keyboards at the clerk's station. She glanced at her watch. 2:53 p.m., just minutes before the hearing on the religious case that Trump had tasked her to monitor. Choosing a hard wooden chair in the middle row, Karoline sat down, set her bag aside, and pulled out her phone to take notes. The silver cross around her neck shimmered under the harsh fluorescent lights, unnoticed by her as many eyes around the room fixed on her. The courtroom was small and cluttered, oppressive in its disorder. A middle-aged man nearby wore a T-shirt, proclaiming, "I am king," and fiddled with his phone. To her right, a young woman with an oversized, sparkling necklace whispered to her lawyer. Clearly, the dress code was lax. Karoline focused. This case involved a group of Christians suing the government over a ban on public prayer in a local park, a cause Trump hoped to rally conservatives around. She was his eyes on the ground. The wooden door behind the judge's bench creaked open. Judge Charles Hargrove emerged. 62 years old, his salt and pepper hair slicked back, wire-rimmed glasses perched low on his nose, black robe pressed impeccably flat. His demeanor was rigid and cold. The crowd fell silent. "All rise," commanded James Wilson, the tall, stern-faced bailiff. Karoline stood, phone in hand, eyes fixed on Hargrove. The judge struck his gavel, signaling the session's start. "This is a court of law, not a place for showing off personality." His voice was deep, sharp as a knife. Hargrove moved quickly through routine cases. A man fined $50 for illegal parking. A woman given a light warning for unpaid rent. Efficient, mechanical, and detached. Karoline noticed the man in the "I am king" T-shirt stand to present a neighbor dispute, and the woman with the flashy necklace called up next. Yet the judge made no comment on their attire. Then his gaze landed on her. Mid-sentence, he paused, flipping through papers, his eyes narrowing behind his glasses as if recognizing her. "Miss Leavitt," he said, voice icy but hesitant. Karoline looked up calmly, standing tall with natural composure. A ripple of murmurs spread as others recognized her too. Hargrove pointed at her cross. "That doesn't belong here. This courtroom is neutral, not a place for displays of faith." Karoline glanced around. No signs prohibited such symbols. "I'm Karoline Leavitt, White House press secretary. I'm here to observe a case for work. This is a personal item, protected by the First Amendment and not violating any rules," she said clearly and confidently. Hargrove squinted. This is not the place to wear that and cause trouble. This is a courtroom, not a church. He banged, his gavel again, asserting his authority. The bailiff observed silently. The court clerk paused her typing, eyeing Karoline with curiosity. The man in the t-shirt and the woman with the necklace whispered, surprised Hargrove hadn't challenged. Them, Karoline gripped her phone tightly. She realized then that Hargrove wasn't just targeting her, but the cross itself, a symbol he seemed to despise. "Sir, I have the right to wear this under the First Amendment," she stated, calm but firm. "Don't lecture me on the law." "Step up to the bench now," he ordered. The room held its breath as Karoline stepped forward, heels clicking on the worn wood floor. Silence fell. All eyes were on her. The silver cross on her collar gleamed like a small flame in the gathering storm. Hargrove sat elevated, his face red with anger. "So what are you doing here with that thing, Miss Leavitt?" he asked sharply. "I'm here on duty, and I have the right to wear it," she replied, discreetly activating her phone's recording. Hargrove slammed the gavel. "I've seen plenty like you, thinking faith gives them the right to disrupt anywhere. This is my courtroom, and I say it's not allowed." He leaned forward, gripping the gavel tightly. "Do you know this behavior is contempt of court?" Karoline furrowed her brow, glancing around. The man in the t-shirt sat unnoticed. The woman whispered to her lawyer, ignored. "Sir, I'm not disrupting anything. I'm here for work, and my attire affects no one. If you have a specific ban, show me the written rule," she challenged. Hargrove smirked coldly. "I am the rule here. You walk into my courtroom disrespecting the law, and now you demand a document?" He banged the gavel, loud enough to silence the clerk's typing. The crowd murmured. An older man whispered, "That necklace is bigger. Why? No fine?" The bailiff tilted his head, recognizing the bias. This wasn't the first time Hargrove had singled someone out. Karoline exhaled slowly, choosing her words carefully. "If I broke a rule, I have the right to a clear explanation." She subtly ensured her phone kept recording. Hargrove sneered, taking her words as a challenge. "Explanation? Here it is. I'm fining you $500 for contempt of court." He slammed the gavel again, the sound final. The crowd gasped. The clerk froze, fingers hovering over keys. A young woman whispered to her friend, "Just for a cross?" The man in the t-shirt chuckled, then silenced by Hargrove's glare. "You'll pay before you leave," the judge barked, tone lecturing. "Maybe this fine will teach you to respect order. This isn't a church, Miss Leavitt, nor a stage for your performance." He leaned back, smug. Karoline stood still, eyes sharp. "Sir, I accept your ruling, but I have the right to ask, why aren't others here fined? The man with the printed shirt? The woman with the big necklace?" Hargrove's face flushed, his knuckles whitened on the gavel. "Don't change the subject. You're the only one bold enough to bring a religious symbol into my courtroom. That's the difference." Karoline nodded slightly, confirming her suspicion. She said no more but thought clearly. Hargrove wasn't just biased. He was deliberately targeting Christian faith. The clerk resumed typing, fingers trembling. In her 12 years working with Hargrove, she'd rarely seen such a harsh fine over something so trivial. The bailiff crossed his arms, glancing at Karoline with quiet empathy. This focus on her felt different. Whispers swelled in the crowd. Some defied rules, sneaking photos. Karoline held her phone tight, mind racing. This was more than a fine. It was an opportunity to expose something bigger. "Are you done, sir?" she asked softly but sharply. Hargrove frowned, thrown by her composure. "Not yet. You'll pay and I'll move on. Sit down." Karoline didn't sit. She stepped closer to the bench, hand resting on its edge, eyes locked on Hargrove. "I'll pay, but we're not done here," she said, voice low but resolute. Hargrove smirked, but it faltered. Karoline stood firm at the defendant's stand. The silver cross on her collar gleamed, a silent challenge. Hargrove had just fined her $500 for contempt of court. His face flushed red with triumph, hands gripping the gavel. The courtroom held its breath. The clerk's anxious eyes darted between Karoline and Hargrove. The bailiff stood poised, sensing something bigger. Hargrove broke the silence. "Miss Leavitt, $500 payable today. Sit down. We have other business." He banged the gavel to signal the end. Karoline took a deep breath, placed her hand firmly on the bench's edge. "Sir, before I sit, I need to clarify a few things for the record," Hargrove snapped, voice sharp but wavering. "You've no right to demand anything here." Karoline smiled, not taunting, but confident. She pulled a small gold card from her bag, and held it up. "I'm Karoline Leavitt, White House press secretary under President Donald Trump. But what you don't know, Judge Hargrove, is that I don't just speak well. I know the law better than you might think." The crowd gasped. The man in the "I am king" shirt gaped. The woman with the necklace whispered to her lawyer. Hargrove froze, hand poised midair over the gavel. "That doesn't change the fact you broke my rules," he muttered, voice fading. Karoline pressed on, voice ringing through the room. "Your rules? Or your personal bias? I'm here on presidential orders to observe this religious case, a group suing for their right to pray publicly. This cross," she pointed to her neck, "is my religious freedom, protected by the First Amendment. You fined me for it. But do you know what the law really says?" Hargrove's face reddened, trying to push back. "I don't need you teaching me the law. This is my courtroom, and I decide." Karoline cut him off, firmer than ever. "You're wrong, sir. The law isn't yours alone. Let me remind you. Church of Lukumi Babalu I versus City of Hialeah, 1993. The Supreme Court ruled that banning religious symbols without just cause violates the Constitution. Do you have just cause? Or is this just because you don't like it?" Silence fell. A few defied rules, snapping. He'd known from the start that she was special. Judge Hargrove slumped back into his chair, his face ashen, hands trembling as they rested on the gavel. He looked at Karoline, truly seeing her for the first time, not as a defendant, but as a formidable opponent. "You think I'm just a spokesperson?" Karoline said, her voice low but commanding. "I've worked alongside President Trump through countless lawsuits, from elections to policy. I taught myself law to defend him, and now I'm using it to defend myself. And others. You just made a big mistake, Judge Hargrove." She placed her White House card firmly on the bench, then stepped back, never breaking eye contact. Hargrove opened his mouth, but no words came. He knew he'd crossed someone not only brilliant, but a legal genius. The courtroom erupted. Scattered applause rippled through the room. Mrs. Thompson typed furiously, as if racing to preserve the moment forever. James Wilson stepped closer to the bench, eyes filled with newfound respect for Karoline. Hargrove sat frozen, his authority crumbling before everyone's eyes. Karoline stood still. The silver cross around her neck gleamed, no longer just a symbol of faith, but a banner of victory. Outside the D.C. local court, the late afternoon sun reflected off the silver cross, pinned to Karoline's navy blazer collar. The clock read 3:30 p.m., but inside, the atmosphere had just exploded. She paused at the glass doors, checking her phone. The courtroom recording had already been sent to the White House, along with a brief message to Trump's advisor, Hargrove. "Find me." The cross handled it. Next steps needed. This was no longer personal. It was a chance for Trump and conservatives to score a major win. Inside, the crowd buzzed with excitement. An older man turned to his neighbor, voice trembling. "I've never seen anyone knock out a judge that fast." Nearby, a young woman whispered. To her boyfriend, "She's the White House press secretary. Incredible." Mrs. Thompson, the clerk, hurriedly printed the session transcript, her hands shaking as she processed what she'd just witnessed. James Wilson, the bailiff, left the courtroom, phone in hand, calling a colleague. "You've got to hear this. A young woman just silenced Hargrove." News spread like wildfire. Karoline hadn't even reached her car before her phone buzzed nonstop. A notification from X. Cross in Court was trending. She opened the app and saw the first tweet from someone. At the scene, judge fines White House press secretary $500 for wearing a cross. She fights back with the law and leaves him speechless. Cross in Court. Within 10 minutes, hundreds of comments flooded in. Who is she? Unreal. Hargrove's done for. A major conservative account tweeted, "Proof the system's against Christians. Thank you, Karoline Leavitt." She gave a small, knowing smile. This wave was just beginning. At 4 p.m., President Trump posted from his personal account, "Karoline Leavitt, my amazing spokesperson, just taught a leftist judge a lesson on religious freedom. Legal genius. We won't let them suppress faith." The tweet racked up over 50,000 retweets in 30 minutes. Conservative outlets like Fox News pounced, running headlines, "White House press secretary faces off with judge over cross and wins big." Karoline received a call from Trump's senior advisor. "You did great," his voice beamed. "The president wants this amplified. Prep a statement." Meanwhile, Judge Hargrove sat alone in his office, dim light casting shadows across his pale face. His phone rang nonstop. From the D.C. Judicial Council, reporters, even old colleagues. He silenced it, hands trembling around a cold coffee mug. The clash with Karoline hadn't just humiliated him publicly, it was spreading across the city, he muttered. "She's just a young woman. How did this happen?" But deep down, he knew he'd collided with something bigger than himself. Mrs. Thompson, still at the courthouse, couldn't stay silent. She called a friend at a local paper, voice low but resolute. "I've worked with Hargrove for 12 years. He always targets religious symbols, especially Christian ones. That girl today, she was right. I've got notes to prove it." She pulled out a small notebook, filled with entries documenting similar cases. People fined for crosses, warned for hijabs, while slogan tees and flashy jewelry were ignored. She knew the risk, but after today, silence was no longer an option. James. Wilson took action too. He met colleagues in the courthouse break room, recounting the event with emotion. "I counted at least 20 times this year alone that Hargrove fined people for religious symbols. Rude t-shirts? He laughs those off. Leave it exposed. What we all knew but wouldn't say." A colleague nodded. "I'll call the press. This needs to be out there by 5 p.m. At 5 p.m., Channel 7 news reporter broadcast live outside the courthouse. Today, White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt was fined $500 for wearing a cross in court. She fought back, and now the city is buzzing. On X, Cross in Court soared past 100,000 mentions. People shared their own Hargrove stories. "He fined me $200 for a prayer badge last year. I saw him scold a mom for a cross in a divorce case." Major Account posted a short video, secretly filmed in court, of Karoline holding up her White House card, her voice ringing out strong. The clip went viral, hitting 1 million views within hours. Karoline sat in her parked car on a quiet street corner watching the news explode. She called her husband, a low-key businessman. Her voice calm but excited. She said, "Honey, I just shut down a judge. This is about to get huge." He laughed over the phone. "You always pull off crazy stuff. Stay safe." She nodded, hung up, and opened an email from Trump's office. "Prep for a press conference tonight. We're turning this into a win at home." Hargrove turned on the TV, seeing his face on the evening news. Judge faces backlash after finding press secretary. The bold headline flashed. He switched it off, hands shaking. The Judicial Council had called, demanding an explanation. He knew. His 30-year career was teetering, all because of a 27-year-old and her tiny cross. The next morning, the D.C. Judicial Council's office buzzed like a beehive. News of Karoline Leavitt and Judge Hargrove had swept through Washington, forcing an urgent investigation. Linda Martinez, a seasoned investigator with 20 years' experience, stood before a long table covered with dozens of case files from Hargrove's court. Her team had been working non-stop since 6 a.m. after receiving an official complaint filed by Karoline the night before. "We've got 48 hours to report," Linda told her. "Team, voice firm. Find everything tied to Hargrove and religious symbols." Meanwhile, Karoline sat in her White House office prepping for tonight's press conference. At Trump's command, she reviewed the courtroom recording and sent another email to his advisor. "I've got data from X, hundreds accusing Hargrove of bias. Push this hard." Her phone buzzed constantly. Messages from lawyers, reporters, supporters. A law student wrote, "You inspire me. Hargrove fined my mom for a cross once." Karoline smiled. This was no longer just her fight. It had reached thousands. Mrs. Thompson entered the investigation room, clutching her small notebook. "I've tracked 12 years with Hargrove," she told Linda, voice shaky but resolute. "He always targeted religious symbols, crosses, hijabs, anything that stood out. But rude shirts and loud jewelry? He let those slide." Linda flipped through the notebook, spotting dozens of cases. September 14, 2024. Man fined $300 for wearing a cross. October 20th, 2024. Muslim woman fined $200 for hijab inappropriateness. Linda frowned. "This is gold. Thank you." James Wilson showed up too, offering a handwritten statement. "I've been a bailiff here 15 years, he said. "Hargrove fines people with religious symbols 3 times more than for other violations. I counted once. In a single day, he hit 5 people for crosses but ignored 3 wearing vulgar shirts." Linda jotted notes fast, her team cross-checking with official records. The data soon emerged. Over the past year, 70% of fines for religious symbols targeted Christians, averaging 200 to 150, double the penalty for other dress code breaches. Judge Hargrove sat in his home office, facing the council via Zoom. "I didn't mean to be biased," he said weakly, hands cradling his head. Linda presented the data. "Mr. Hargrove, records show you fined people wearing crosses 80% more harshly than similar violations. How do you explain that?" Hargrove fell silent, eyes downcast. He recalled Karoline, her steely voice, her sharp reasoning on the First Amendment. "I didn't realize," he mumbled. "I thought I was maintaining order." By noon, Linda's preliminary report was complete. "This isn't just Hargrove," she told the council. "We found 3 other D.C. judges with similar tendencies, though milder. But Hargrove is the clearest case of bias, especially against Christianity." The council ordered Hargrove's immediate suspension pending a final ruling. News.